I never thought I'd see my baby laugh like that. Tiny hands clapping, eyes bright with delight. While a black-scaled snake inched closer across the nursery floor one afternoon, I was folding laundry in the hallway when I heard Ella's laughter, bright and musical, drifting from her nursery. At first, it warmed my heart. She had just started giggling a few weeks before, and every sound felt like a tiny milestone. I imagined her cradling her stuffed rabbit, pressing its fuzzy ears to her face. But when I stepped into the doorway, the image before me was something I could never have prepared for. The late sunlight fell across the pale carpet, and in that golden spill of light, a thick black snake was moving slowly toward the crib. Its body rippled with sickening grace, the scales catching the light in iridescent gleams. For an instant, my mind refused to make sense of it. I thought maybe it was a belt or some stray toy. But then it lifted its head, tongue flickering. I couldn't move. I felt nailed to the floor by a fear that ran deeper than any I'd ever known. But Ella, she didn't flinch. She didn't cry or shrink back. She watched the snake with wide, gleaming eyes, her little mouth curling into a smile. And then she giggled, a bubbling laugh that seemed to fill every corner of the room. The snake paused, its head raised, as if drawn to the sound. For a terrible moment, I thought it might rear back to strike, but it only tilted its head, tongue tasting the air. My heart was slamming so hard in my chest, I thought I might black out. Instinct finally kicked in, snapping me from my paralysis. I lunged forward, scooping Ella up into my arms. She protested, wriggling against me, her eyes fixed on the creature below as if I were taking her away from something precious. I backed out of the room, never turning my back on it. When I reached the hallway, I slammed the door and called pest control with shaking hands. They found nothing. No sign of a snake, no opening in the walls or vents. By the time I dared to look again, the nursery was empty, except for her toys scattered across the floor, and the memory of her laughter echoing in my ears after that first visit. I couldn't shake the feeling that something in our house had changed. It wasn't just the fear of seeing the snake again. It was the way Ella behaved. She became restless when I kept her out of the nursery, whining and pointing insistently at the closed door. Whenever I relented and let her crawl on the floor to play, she would sit perfectly still, eyes fixed on the corner by the window, as if waiting for something only she could see. It didn't take long before the snake returned. The second time, I found it coiled beneath the crib, black scales blending with the shadows. Ella was standing, gripping the railing with her small hands, beaming down at it with uncontainable joy. The moment she saw me, she began to babble in a stream of high, excited sounds that were no language I recognized. They were soft and rhythmic, almost melodic, and they made my skin prickle in a way I couldn't explain. I rushed forward, heart hammering, and the snake slipped back into the darkness beneath the crib. When pest control came again, they insisted there were no nests, no evidence that anything had ever been there at all. My husband started suggesting that maybe I was imagining it, or that my fear was making me see something ordinary as a threat. But he wasn't the one who heard her strange, urgent babble at night, coming through the baby monitor in garbled, sibilant syllables. Sometimes I thought I heard something answering her, a faint hissing, so quiet I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. But every morning when I lifted her from her crib, she looked over my shoulder and smiled into the empty air, as though reassuring someone that she'd be back soon. It was the way she was changing that truly terrified me. She no longer reached for her stuffed animals or her rattles. She'd sit for long stretches in the middle of the floor, hands resting in her lap, staring patiently at the shadows. She seemed content in a way that felt unnatural, as though she was waiting for a friend I couldn't see, a friend she trusted more than she trusted me. I started to realize that whatever bond had formed between my daughter and the snake, it wasn't fading. It was growing stronger after the second and third sightings. I stopped pretending this was something that would simply go away. No matter how many times pest control searched, no matter how carefully we checked the windows and doors, the snake always returned. And each time it came closer. I bought a baby monitor with night vision and set it on the shelf across from Ella's crib. If I couldn't stop whatever was happening, at least I could see it. The first night, the recording was blank. The second, too. But on the third, I finally caught it. I watched the screen in the blue glow of my laptop, dread coiling in my stomach as the timestamp flickered past 2 a.m. At first, nothing. Just a slow rise and fall of Ella's breathing as she slept. Then movement. Slow, sinuous, deliberate, at the base of the crib. The snake lifted its head until it was level with her face. And for a moment, they were so close I could almost believe they were touching. Ella's eyes fluttered open. She didn't scream. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she smiled, soft, serene, and reached through the bars to rest her tiny hand against the dark scales. My breath caught in my throat as the snake stayed perfectly still, allowing her to pet it as if it were nothing more than a harmless toy. When she giggled, it tilted its head, as if listening carefully to the sound. I replayed that moment over and over, my heart sick with the realization I'd been fighting to avoid. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a ritual, a meeting, and my daughter was not a passive observer. She was an eager participant. The next morning, when I lifted her from the crib, her hand trailed along the railing where the snake had been. She looked past me to that same empty corner and gave a little wave. Something twisted in my gut. It no longer felt like an ordinary animal. I didn't know if it was something ancient or something newly born, but it had chosen her, and she had accepted it. That night, as I lay awake listening for the soft scrape of scales on the floorboards, I understood something I could never admit out loud. The snake wasn't visiting us. It was claiming her sometimes. The bonds we don't understand are the most dangerous of all. What seems innocent or harmless, a child's laughter, a silent visitor, can hide intentions far beyond our comprehension. Never ignore your instincts, especially when they warn you that something is watching, waiting, and choosing who to claim.